What's up, y'all? It's been a while. I haven't posted in, I think it's 2 weeks now. Honestly, after coming back from holidays, my rhythm was just kind of a bit messed up. And I guess it's really important to talk about rhythm, routine, how it can really affect your fitness goals, your health, etc. But that's not the point of this video today. I mean, that can be part of it actually, rhythm and routine. But it's good to be back. I finally found a topic that I can talk about. That was the other thing as well. I just kept thinking, what do I talk about? And yeah, I think this one's a good topic. So without further ado, let's get into it. So injuries. I don't see that many YouTube videos talking about injuries, or maybe it just doesn't come up in my algorithm. But one thing that I didn't really grow up with, I'm very lucky, till I was maybe until 22 or 23 after uni. That's when I started getting more niggles, tendonitis, strained backs, etc. But before that, I'm very lucky. I never had anything, touch wood, super serious. And from my understanding, I do believe there's a pretty big genetic component to that. Some people are just more injury prone, touch wood. Yeah. Some people are more injury prone. And yeah, there's not much you can do about it other than get better parents. Now, obviously, and so saying that, there's a lot of things we can do to try to prevent that risk, right? So, a couple things I want to talk about. How do we maybe prevent injury, but also when you do get injured, how do you deal with it? What do you do, etc. Right? Now, I'm not a medical professional. This is not medical advice. This is just based off of my own experience, and as well as speaking to medical professionals, namely physiotherapists. Usually the first line of defense is going to be talking to a physiotherapist, unless you obviously break your arm or whatnot, then that's really obvious. You don't need a physio to tell you you've broken your arm. You can go straight to A&E if it's really bad, or go to a doctor. Orthopedic surgeon will operate, do surgery on you, and then the physiotherapist will deal with your rehab, because rehabilitation is very important if you want to ensure that your mobility as well as strength resumes and it goes back to normal function. So first thing is, let's prevent injuries altogether, right? We need to ask ourselves, what is our goal? It's really important to establish what your goal is when it comes to health and training. If your goal is just to be healthy and look better, there's so many ways to ensure that you don't get injured training whilst also maximizing your gains. And I think a large proportion of people who train, so weight train especially, and even do cardio, just want to do it so that they can look better and feel better and be healthier. If that's the case, you really shouldn't be risking your, let's say, health, joint health, integrity, tendons, ligaments, etc. to achieve those things. So how do we ensure that we can stay injury-free whilst also maximizing those gains? Is number one, when you weight train, you don't need to go super heavy. Now, obviously, it's really awesome to build strength, but there's plenty of studies to show that anywhere between 5 to 30 reps will achieve the same amount of hypertrophy, and will induce the same amount of hypertrophy, assuming obviously you do everything correctly, which means getting close to failure. So if, let's say, you leave 10 reps in the tank, it doesn't matter how many reps you do, it's still gonna be garbage junk volume, okay? So you need to get close to failure. Now, getting close to failure on 6 reps compared to 20 reps makes no difference in terms of hypertrophy. So you can pick either or. Now, I personally prefer to go to the lower rep range simply because more often than not, when you hit, let's say, 15 reps, you start to get that massive burn, and that's what we call metabolic stress, like that pump, right? And more often than not, you can actually hit way more reps without realizing it, but because the pump stops you from able to do that, you don't end up getting close to failure. So that's why I prefer to go lower reps. However, the problem with lower reps is that you'll find your joints struggle a bit more. So overloading through weight, you tend to have to add more strain onto the joints, and that's how people end up with tendonitis, issues with their joints, etc., etc. So if your goal is just to be bigger, just to get bigger, look better, you really don't have to overload via strength, overload via reps. You don't need to overload via weight. You can overload via reps, because at the end of the day, volume is what leads to growth, as well as getting close to failure on each set. So I would highly recommend doing that for weight training. And obviously, if you're someone who's never weight trained before, don't suddenly jump into 4 days a week of training and training hard, because that's likely going to cause you to get injured. Your muscles may be able to build very quickly. Muscles adapt faster, but joints, tendons, ligaments do not, okay? They take time to build and remodel. So take your time with that and don't go hardcore right away, okay? It really is a marathon when it comes to building a good physique, unless obviously you take shortcuts like doing roids. But funnily enough, people who do roids tend to be more prone to injury simply because they're able to train harder, their muscles grow faster, and the joints, tendons, ligaments don't. And that's how you hear a lot of people end up with pec tears, joint issues, etc., etc. Okay? So take it slowly. The same applies for cardio. So again, if your goal is just to do cardio to make sure that, do cardio so then you can look good, then I would say go with low intensity cardio. Now, if you're someone who's on a massive bulk, you're quite heavy, you're 20% and above, running is probably not the world's best, especially if you're not accustomed to running, you've not actually run before. Don't do it. Just go on literally go on a treadmill, put it on an incline, get on a Stairmaster, so much safer. You can even consider rowing, biking, okay? They're super low impact, swimming, etc. Steady state, don't go high intensity. A lot of people go, oh, but HIIT's better for losing weight compared to steady state, right? Well, it depends on how many calories you eat back, as well as how much fatigue you incur. And generally speaking, those who do HIIT will incur a lot more fatigue. You take a massive fatigue penalty, and that's gonna really affect your ability to lift heavy weights and therefore build muscle. So that's why you'll notice a lot of bodybuilders tend to do very low intensity cardio, right? It's also better for your joints, especially if you're heavy. So I would generally recommend those things. As for rowing, biking, swimming, I'd probably still go steady state, but honestly, going a little more intense will probably not kill you, unless if obviously your technique is garbage or you're just going way too hard on the RPE. If your goal is, again, to just look good, you really shouldn't be pushing your cardio more than a RPE 5. So it should feel like moderate intensity at best, okay? That's the short story. And one more thing as well. A lot of people go, oh, well, this is not really related to injuries, but is steady state or low intensity cardio better than HIIT or vice versa? There's no better or worse. I would generally recommend steady state if you have the time, simply because you take a significantly lower fatigue penalty for it. So if, let's say, in an hour you can burn 500 calories on the rower, as opposed to on the HIIT, like using the rower for HIIT and burn 500 calories in, let's say, 20 minutes, you're probably gonna be broken by the end of HIIT. I'm sure some of y'all who have done HIIT properly, you know how it feels. You're probably gonna feel dead for next 2 days. On top of that, you're probably gonna likely end up eating more calories to make up for how tired you are. So generally, if you have time, I would recommend go steady state, okay? That's the short answer. On top of that, from an injury perspective, you're just less likely to get injured doing steady state than high intensity exercise. Okay, now, moving on to, so we were talking about injury prevention from an aesthetics point of view. Now, obviously, if you're an athlete, that's a different story, especially if you're trying to make it to a certain, level. So if you want to, let's say, play for a club, you want to play for your varsity team, etc., whatever, that's a different story. You will need to take some risks, especially in your sport itself. You need to train high intensity. Now, the one thing I would say as someone who grew up playing sports is what I would recommend kids do is, rather than constantly going high intensity, you should be able to program properly to make sure you improve really well in sport. A very good example is the Americans versus the Russians when it comes to wrestling. So why are Russian wrestlers just so high level compared to, American wrestlers are really good as well, obviously, but Russian wrestlers are generally considered more elite compared to the Americans. For y'all American viewers, please don't hate on me, but it's kind of true. The Eastern Europeans have time and time again dominated. So why is that the case? And why are there a lot more kids that come out of it being less injured as well? It's down to the training methodologies, not genetics or anything like that, training methodology. And how Russian wrestlers train is they'll program, I think, a couple of days that are high intensity, super hard, a lot of sparring, rolling, etc., etc. Whereas if you look at Americans and how they train, it's literally high intensity every day. Okay, so there's no room for low intensity wrestling. And the thing with low intensity wrestling is you can do a lot of drills. You can actually learn a lot of skills by drilling, and that applies to every other sport as well. So if you, let's say you want to be a better football player, as in association football, so soccer, as Americans would call it, you shouldn't be playing matches every day. We all know that, right? You probably have once a week of matches, and then you can probably do 1 or 2 days a week of fitness work at moderate towards high intensity, and depending on how well you recover, you do a lot of drills. So ball skills or whatever your position requires you to do more of that, right? If your touch is weak, work on your touch. That doesn't require any sort of cardio. It doesn't require, there's no fatigue penalty on working on those things, and that's what's gonna make you a better football player, a better athlete, okay? And this applies to any sport, okay? If there's one thing I can change, going back into fighting again, it's I would maybe only spar once or twice a week. Easier said than done for me because I loved sparring and I loved high intensity training, but that's exactly why I got injured all the damn time. I wasn't also eating enough too. I wasn't sleeping enough. I wasn't recovering well, so that's a recipe for disaster. I got sick every 2 months. I was injured every couple of months, and at first I thought, oh, something's wrong with me, but yeah, maybe I'm more genetically unable to recover well compared to other people. I know some people that can recover much better than I can, but that's not an excuse. That just means I need to dial down on my programming better, right? And that's what have made me better. So if we look back, I would have done maybe 1 or 2 sparring sessions a week, high intensity, and some high intensity bag work, pads, etc. And then the other days would just be working on drills, constantly working on drills and making sure that I'm able to apply them when I spar again, okay? So that's called smart programming, and that's what's gonna lead you to less injuries as well as less sickness. There's actually research to show as well that high-level athletes, elite athletes, are more prone to upper respiratory tract infections. So they're more likely to get sick, and that's due to the inflammatory response you get from high-intensity training. So that lasts for anywhere between 24 to 48 hours, up to 24 to 48 hours. Your immune cells dip in terms of its response towards foreign, what do you call them? Not infections, like cells that come in to invade, right? You get the point. So, long story short, get in your sleep, recover. If you're someone who doesn't recover as well as others, you gotta rest more, you gotta sleep more, dial down more on your recovery. Some people can get away with less recovery. Genetically, everyone's different. And that's why coaching is not just a science, but an art, because a good coach should be able to tailor for every single athlete, okay? All right, that's kind of injury prevention talked about. And obviously do your strength, if you're an athlete as well, do your strength training, do your work to ensure that you don't get sick, don't get injured. So it's the boring stuff that your physios was prescribed you, and y'all know what else there is. So now on to if you are injured, okay? Now this is another massive topic. I'm not a physio again, so this is just based on my experience as well as speaking to my best friend who's told me how to manage mine. And there's 2 things that I would say are quite important to manage, and this is everything I've learned over the last 13 years. I am very prone to a strained back, so I strain my quadratus lumborum. For those of y'all who don't know what that is, that's the QL, which is a deeper muscle in the back, okay, the lower back. And I'm pretty prone to straining that. And a lot of people will go, well, obviously that means your QL is weak, right? Yes and no. It's a much more nuanced answer than that most of the time. Just because that muscle keeps getting strained doesn't necessarily mean it's weak. It could just mean that, oh, well, it is a smaller muscle group, so it is more prone to being strained when you're lifting heavy stuff. It can't take as much load, which is very common. So if, let's say, your shoulders, you have shoulder issues, okay? Like, let's say your rotator cuffs are weak. They're smaller muscles, and you bench press. Every time you bench press heavy, bang, you strain your rotator cuff. Okay, well, that probably means your rotator cuffs are weak, and you will need to strengthen them. But it could also, like, potentially mean you're just under-recovered, okay? A lot of injuries happen when you are under-recovered, which means you're not sleeping enough, you're not eating well. You know the drill, okay? It could also just mean you're doing way too much stuff. Like, really, overtraining is a thing for some people, and if you're just loading the same thing over and over again, that's how you end up with tendonitis, right? A classic example would be tennis elbow. It might not really mean that you have a weak arm, weak elbow, joints, tendon, ligaments, whatever. It literally could just mean you're repeating the same thing over and over again and doing way too much on that specific joint. So what do? Well, from what I understand, there's 2 things. Number 1, manage your volume and intensity of whatever you're doing. So let's use me as an example. My goal now is to run half marathon and maybe hopefully hit a sub 130. I think it's going to take me 2 to 3 years. Okay, so that's a goal. Now, right now, my mileage is nowhere close to being enough to run a sub 130. I'm currently hitting about 40 kilometers a week, and I do struggle with it because I'm also weight training twice a week. And bang, strained my back a couple of days ago. Luckily, it was mild, but I also plantar fasciitis flared up again, and that was after my long run on Monday. That was a progressive one, so that means there were pace targets, and by about the 13th kilometer, that's when everything started to break down a bit. My heel, I was feeling it, my knee started feeling it as well. That's when I know, okay, maybe I need to dial down on either the intensity or volume, or maybe even both, depending on the severity of the injury, okay? So that's how you need to manage your issues. So let's say you're a basketball player and you're struggling with maybe your Achilles is starting to feel some niggles. That's probably a good sign to dial back, because the last thing you want is a ruptured Achilles. That can be a massive problem, and a friend of mine experienced that. So if you're feeling niggles, don't ignore them. That is your body telling you, hey, either you're doing too much or you're not resting enough, or both, okay? So pay attention to that, lower your volume and intensity, work on other things. Like if you're playing basketball and you're feeling your Achilles all the time after jumping a lot, okay, well then work on your free throws maybe, okay? Maybe ball handling, probably not ideal as well, because there's a lot of lateral movement and very explosive movement. Basketball is a tough sport to train for. There's a lot of explosive work, but you can work on maybe passing or work on your IQ, right? You know, you don't have to be the world's most athletic player to be a very good basketball player, and that applies to most sports. So think outside the box. Don't think I just need to do this, right? Think about other ways you can improve your game. The other thing you can do, other than managing volume and intensity, which to be honest you should be doing anyway, is strengthening the joints, tendons, ligaments, as well as the muscles surrounding the issue, surrounding the muscle or whatever it is that's the problem. So if you're someone who struggles with knee issues, assuming you've spoken to a physiotherapist, they'll generally tell you to maybe do some split squats, right? Try and do more lunges eventually when you can build up to it and build up the strength towards it. Increase the range of motion of the knee joint, and that will help you with preventing injuries. And yeah, with things like this, there's nothing else I can say other than you just got to be diligent and do those exercises that your physio prescribes you, because a lot of people go, well, it didn't work. I went to the physio and I keep getting injured. And it's like, well, have you been consistently doing your exercises? No. Okay, well, that's probably why. The physio is not a magic cure, just like how personal trainers are not magic cures as well. Like, you've got to put in the work. The thing we do is make sure that you don't end up making the same mistakes we did, and you can shortcut your progress, right? So if I were to look back at my training career, started in 2012, weight trained since 2012, it's 2026, so 14 years. Honestly, I probably could have gone to my physique in 3 years training for hypertrophy compared to the 7 or 8 that I focused on building muscle, okay? So I could have easily halved the amount of time I spent if I had the same knowledge now, but had to start with my old physique. So that's what a good trainer should be able to do, is to shortcut the amount of time that you take to get to your goal. But they're not there to help you do the workout, right? Like, you've got to put in the work yourself. We can only show you and teach you as much as we can and provide you with as much empathy as possible. That's what a good trainer should do. And maybe that's a video for another time. But yeah, y'all got to put in the work, okay? This video was longer than I already expected. I was already speaking very quickly because there were a lot of things firing in my head, but I hope that gives y'all a bit of insight on what to do when you have issues with injuries, niggles, and just general under recovery or maybe overtraining as well, okay? I covered a lot here. Please comment, subscribe, like. Feel free to say anything, questions, doubts, criticisms, or even just good points that you enjoyed listening to. Comment. I'll catch y'all in the next video. See y'all next time. Peace.